the July 5th Environmental Resources Committee to order. Moving on to item 2.
This meeting is being recorded.
Flag, and ask that you all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving on to public comment, we do have an individual signed up. Nancy Stencil, I believe you're with us? Okay. Seeing as you're, do we have anybody else online that's indicated? Okay. You would have up to 15 minutes to address the group, so.
Hello, I'm Nancy Stencil, 223-281 Azalea Road in Wausau, town of Red Mountain. And I'm just here so that all of you don't forget my face. And I would like to comment that, again, water is life. This has to do with your exploratory drilling, possible. I don't believe that we need to trade water for a few good jobs. And when you extract something from the land and you destroy your home, you know, I want you to keep in mind who pays for that cleanup while a mining company goes home with a lot of money. And I'm reminding you that they have no social license here. We cannot eat or drink gold, and we need political leadership here that is willing to stand up for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing as no one else wishes to speak, we'll move on to item number 4, approval of the May 31st, 2022 committee minutes. Before entertaining a motion to approve, I would like to make note of one change under, let me see here in the minutes. It was under item 3 with the Matthew Leinbach rezone. Under action, please note that whoever maintains these minutes that you know, the motion to move this agenda item to a forthcoming month, there was no formal action taken with this particular item because it was not properly noticed. So I would just ask that that be accurately reflected in the meeting minutes. We simply just did not act on it, moved on to the next item. Okay. With that change, motion to approve would be in order. Motion by Supervisor Drabek, second by Supervisor Vensky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. A, public hearings, review possible actions and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. We have county zoning changes. We are now going to open the public hearing. I would ask that you all please mute your phones and please mute yourself if you are joining us electronically and are not addressing the committee. The Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is now meeting in public hearing on the location, plan, specifications, and purpose of the following projects. 1, Matthew Leinbach, urban residential and rural estate to rural residential, town of Spencer. 2, Christy Wasinger, general agriculture to rural estate, town of Elderon. 3, Randy Bukowski, general agriculture to rural estate, town of Reed. 4, Draggers Dairy Farm, general agriculture to rural residential, town of Red Falls. And 5, Draggers Dairy Farm Incorporated, general agriculture to low-density residential, town of Red Falls. I'd like to quickly take a moment to introduce members of the committee. Myself, Jacob Langenhan, the chair of the ERC, Supervisor Alan Drabek, the vice chair, Supervisor Rick Seefeld, Supervisor David Overbeck, Supervisor Mike Ritter, Supervisor Andrew Vensky, Supervisor Tony Shervinsky, Supervisor Kim Unger, and Marilyn Bend, our Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association rep, and Rodney Roskopf, who is our Farm Service Agency representative. Also present are our staff, Lori Miskimans, the Conservation Planning and Zoning Director, Christy Heidenreich, our County Conservationist, Shad Harvey, our Land Resource Manager, Nicole Delaunay, our Administrative Coordinator, Garrett Poggle, our Land Use Technician, and Aaron Anklam, our Zoning Technician. The establishment of the Environmental Resources Committee is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, but must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested may appear. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements and on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request that you please avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are a recommendation to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. The committee will now hear the application of 5A1, Matthew Leinbach, Urban Residential and Rural Estate to Rural Residential, Town of Spencer. And we will begin with our staff report, and I believe we have Shad for that. Shad, do you sort of tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed. Thank you.
Matthew Lembach, petition to rezone land, staff report, July 5th, 2022, Environmental Resource Committee. The petitioner is Matthew Lembach. Property owner is also Matthew Lembach, 109115 County Road C in Spencer, Wisconsin, 54479. Location of the rezone request. Area proposed to be rezoned is in the town of Spencer, west of the intersection of Abe Lincoln Ave and County Road C. The petition of Matthew Leinbach to amend Marathon County zoning ordinance to rezone lands from urban residential to rural estate to rural residential as described as part of the northeast corner of the northeast quarter of Section 12, Township 26 North, Range 2 East, Town of Spencer. The area proposed to be rezoned is described as Lot 2 on the certified survey map that was submitted with the rezone petition. Parcel PIN number 074-2602-121-0983. Public hearing and meeting, Town of Spencer Town Board meeting on May 10th, 2022, and Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee meeting today, July 5th, 2022 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Existing zoning districts, urban residential, and rural estate. Existing land use map, Town of Spencer. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as residential in the town's comprehensive plan. Existing land use map. Adjacent land uses are comprised of agricultural, commercial, and residential. The proposed zoning district, rural residential. Town's comprehensive plan, future land use map. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as commercial in the town's comprehensive plan. Adjacent land uses are comprised of agriculture and residential. The town of Spencer does not participate in farmland preservation zoning, therefore there are no parcels within the town zoned farmland preservation. On May 10th, 2022, the Town of Spencer Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resource Committee. Conclusions of law. Number 1, the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan relies on the town's comprehensive plan regarding specific land uses and zoning districts for individual parcels. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown and designated as commercial in the town's future land use map. CPZ staff rely on the towns to make these recommendations given the town board members and residents know their own town and the true purpose intent of the plan. The area in question was not designated as farmland preservation. The town of Spencer does not participate in farmland preservation zoning. As indicated by the town's resolution/recommendation, it appears the rezone is consistent with the purpose, intent of the comprehensive plan. Number 2, no cropland will be consumed. Number 3, the need is to correct a split zoning parcel. B, all necessary public facilities are anticipated to be provided, given any proposed development would rely on private systems such as a private well and sanitary system. C, no anticipated burden on local government. All applicable building construction and use standards will be applied during the zoning and building permit review process. Number 4, all federal, state, and local permits and approvals are required for any applicable development on site. Additionally, the proposed rezone will likely not result in any unreasonable air or water pollution, as all pertinent regulations apply and will need to be adhered to. Any disturbance greater than 1 acre would need a Wisconsin DNR stormwater management permit. The Town of Spencer Town Board has recommended approval to this petition. Number 6, the county was not made or aware of any concerns from any other agencies. Staff recommendations. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan as indicated by the town's resolution. Based on the information provided, finding of facts, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors.
Okay, any questions for Shad? All right, seeing and hearing none. Thank you, Shad. Moving on, I'd ask anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. And we are currently on the Matthew Leinbach rezone. I do see that Matthew has joined us electronically. I don't know if he wishes to speak.
Matthew, I've taken you off mute if you wish to speak.
Can you hear us, Mr. Leinbach?
There earlier.
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, do you wish to testify today? If you do, I would swear you in.
No.
Okay, thank you. I'll just call anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, Matthew Leinbach, urban res to rural estate. Sorry, urban residential and rural estate to rural residential town of Spencer, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone? Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. Last call, anybody wishing to speak as interested? Seeing and hearing that there is no one else wishing to testify on the proposed rezone for Matthew Leinbach, urban residential and rural estate to rural estate to rural residential town of Spencer, I am now declaring the public hearing closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application and apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. I would just remind the committee that this is the item that we did not act on last month because it was not properly noticed. The information should not have changed substantially, besides, of course, the notice provided to the public and the other parties is reflected to capture the action itself. So, what is the pleasure of the committee? Supervisor Seefeld?
Can I make a motion to approve the Matthew Leinbach to amend Marathon County zone ordinance to rezone land from urban residential and rural estate to rural residential in the town of Spencer, and to approve the conclusions of law and forwarded to the county board.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the proposed rezone, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 5A2, we have the rezone, the proposed rezone for Christy Wasinger, general agriculture to rural, I believe it's rural estate, the document that I have in here. Oh, one second. Rural estate, town of Eldron. Chad, go ahead.
Christy Wasinger, petition to rezone land, staff report, July 5th, 2022, Environmental Resource Committee. The petitioner is Christy Wasinger, 935 Crystalline Street, Nacita, Wisconsin. Property owners is the same. Location of the rezone request, area proposed to be rezoned is in the town of Eldron, just east of the intersection of High Tower Road and Pike Lake Road. The request, the position of Christy Wasinger to amend Marathon County zoning ordinance to rezone lands, general agriculture to rural estate, described as part of the northwest quarter of Section 21, Township 27 North, Range 10 East, Town of Eldron. The area proposed to be rezoned is described as Lot 1 on the preliminary certified survey map submitted in the rezone petition, part of the parent parcel PIN 022-2710-212-0992. Public hearing and meetings, the Town of Eldron Town Board, June 7th, 2022, and the Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee today, July 5th, 2022 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. The existing zoning district is general agriculture. The existing land use map for the town of Eldron, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as woodlands in the town's existing land use map. Adjacent lands are comprised of woodlands, residential, and open lands. Proposed zoning district, rural estate, town's comprehensive future land use map. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as woodlands in the town's comprehensive future land use map. Adjacent land use are comprised of residential and open land uses. Farmland preservation, the town of Eldron does not participate in farmland preservation. Here's an aerial of the site. Town recommendation. On June 7th, 2022, the Town of Eldron Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resource Committee. Conclusions of law. Number 1, the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan relies on the town's comprehensive plan regarding specific land uses and zoning districts for individual parcels. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown to be designated as woodlands in the town's future land use map. CPZ staff rely on the towns to make these recommendations, given the town board members and residents know their town and the true purpose and intent of the plan. The area in question was not designated as a farmland preservation area. The town of Eldron does not participate in farmland preservation zoning. As indicated by the town's future land use map and the town's resolution, it appears the rezone is consistent with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. Number 2, no farmland will be consumed. Number 3A, the need is for a proposed land division. 3B, all necessary public facilities are anticipated to be provided, given any proposed development would rely on private systems such as private well and sanitary system. 3C, no anticipated burden on local government. All applicable building, construction, and use standards will be applied during the zoning and building permit process. 4, all federal, state, and local permits and approvals are required for any applicable development on site. Additionally, the proposed rezone will likely not result in an unreasonable air and water pollution, as all pertinent regulations apply and will need to be adhered to. Any disturbance greater than 1 acre would need a DNR stormwater management permit. Number 5, the Town of Eldron Town Board has recommended approval of the rezone petition. Number 6, the county was not made aware of any concerns from other agencies. Staff recommendations. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan, as indicated by the town's resolution. Based on the information provided, finding of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors.
Any questions from the committee for Shad? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. Okay, now, anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, and we are on item 5A2, Christy Wasinger, General Agriculture to Rural Estate in the Town of Elderon, please identify yourself at this time. Last call, anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one last time. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, for 5A2, Christy Wasinger, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, please identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak as interested? Seeing and hearing none. I am now, if no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on Christy Wasinger, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Elderon, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Was the pleasure of the committee. Supervisor Seefeld?
Make a motion for the request of petition of Christy Wasinger to amend the Marathon County ordinance to rezone land from general agricultural to rural estate in the town of Elderon and to approve the conclusions of law and forward it to the Marathon County Board.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Overbeck. He got there just a tenth of a second sooner. All right, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the proposed rezone, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Item 5A3, Randy Bukowski, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Reed.
Randy Bukowski, petition to rezone land, staff report, July 5th, 2022, Environmental Resource Committee. Petitioner is Randy Bukowski at 1031 Weston Ave, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54403. Property owners is the same. Location of the rezone request, area proposed to be rezoned is in the town of Reed, just northeast of the intersection of Norman's Road and County Road Y. Request, the petition of Randy Bukowski to amend Marathon County zoning ordinance to rezone lands from general agriculture to rural estate described as part of the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter, part of the southeast quarter of the northwest quarter, and part of the southwest quarter of the northeast, all in section 26, township 27 north, range 9 east, town of Reed. The area proposed to be rezoned is described as lot 1 on the preliminary survey map submitted to the rezone with the rezone petition, part of the parent parcel pin 064-2709-261-0993 and pin 064-2709-261-0983. Public hearings. Town of Reed Town Board meeting on June 14th, 2022. The Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee meeting today, July 5th, 2022 at 3 p.m. Legal notification. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Existing zoning district, general agriculture. Existing generalized land use map for the town of Reed. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as commercial in the town's comprehensive plan. Adjacent compromise residential, woodlands, and croplands. Proposed rural estate, town's comprehensive future land use map. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as commercial in the town's comprehensive plan. Adjacent land uses are comprised of residential, woodlands, and croplands. Farmland Preservation area. The town of Reed does not participate in farmland preservation. Town recommendation. On June 14th, 2022, the Town of Reed Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resource Committee. Conclusions of law. The Marathon County Comprehensive Plan relies on the Town Comprehensive Plan regarding the specific land uses and zoning districts for individual parcels. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown designated as forest lands. And I apologize before, previously, where it said commercial, it was meant to be forest lands. And the town's future land use map, CPZ staff rely on the towns to make recommendations, given the town board members and residents know their town and true and purpose intent of the plan. The area in question was not designated as Farmland Preservation area. The town of Reed does not participate in the Farmland Preservation zoning. As indicated by the town's resolution, it appears the rezone is consistent with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. Number 2, no farmland will be consumed. Number 3, A, the need is for a proposed land division. 3B, all necessary public facilities are anticipated to be provided, given any proposed development will rely on private systems such as a private well and sanitary system. 3C, no anticipated burden on local government. All applicable building, construction, and use standards will be applied during the zoning and building permit review process. 4, all federal, state, and local permits and approvals are required for any applicable development on site. Additionally, proposed rezones will likely not result in any unreasonable air and water pollution, as all pertinent regulations apply and will need to be adhered to. Any disturbance greater than 1 acre would need a DNR stormwater management permit. Number 5, the Town of Reed Town Board recommended approval to this rezone petition. Number 6, the county was not made aware of any concerns from other agencies. Staff recommendations. The rezone meets all the zoning districts and standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan as indicated by the town's resolution. Based on the information provided, finding of facts, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Shad. Any questions? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much. Moving on. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone? We are on 5A3, Randy Bukowski, General Ag to Rural Estate, Town of Reed. Please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested on the proposed rezone for 5A3, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone? Okay. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify on this application, I am now declaring the public hearing for Randy Bukowski, General Agricultural to Rural Estate, Town of Reed, now closed. Committee will now deliberate on the application, apply standards of zoning ordinance. What is the pleasure of the committee? Supervisor Seefeld?
Make a motion for the request of petition of Randy Bukowski to amend Marathon County zoning ordinance to rezone land from general agricultural to rural estate in the town of Reed, and to approve the conclusions of law and forward it to the Marathon County Board.
Is there a second? Supervisor Drabeck, is there any discussion? One thing I'm going to note, I was going to bring it up with the last motion, Supervisor Seefeld, but Ed, you said it, the way you worded the motion, I would just highlight that I don't believe that we're amending the ordinance, we're recommending approval of the rezone to the county board, right? So is that consistent with your motion for this one and the last one? And nobody wishes to withdraw their seconds? All right, that's fine. I just want to make that part of the record. All right, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, burning right through these. 5A4, Draggers Dairy Farm, general agriculture to rural residential, town of Rib Falls.
So Draggers Dairy Farm Incorporated, petition to rezone land, staff report, July 5th, 2022. Environmental Resource Committee. The petitioner is James Drager, 237588 Schoolhouse Lane, Marathon, Wisconsin, 54448. Property owners, Drager's Dairy Farm Inc., address 237588 Schoolhouse Lane, Marathon, Wisconsin, 54448. Location of rezone request, area proposed to be rezoned is in the town of Rib Falls, just south of the intersection of Schoolhouse Lane and Sky Falls Drive. Request the petition of Drager's Dairy Farm, Inc. to amend General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County's Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from general agriculture to rural residential, described as part of the southeast quarter of the fractional northeast of Section 2, Township 29 North, Range 5 East, Town of Rib Falls. The area proposed to be rezoned is described as part of Lot 1 on the preliminary certified survey map submitted with the rezone petition. Part of the parent parcel 066-2905-021-0996. Public hearings, the Town of Rib Falls Town Board meeting, June 14th, 2022. Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee meeting, July 5th, 2022 at 3 p.m. Legal notification, a legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Existing zoning district, general agriculture. Existing land use map, Town of Rib Falls. The area proposed to be rezoned is currently shown as agriculture and residential uses. Rural residential is the proposed zoning district. The town comprehensive plan future land use map, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as agriculture in the town's comprehensive plan. Future land use map, adjacent lands are comprised of residential and open land uses. Farmland preservation, the town of Rib Falls does not participate in farmland preservation zoning. Therefore, there are no parcels within the town zone farmland preservation. Here's an aerial photo, and as you can see, the red outline mark is the parcel that is in question, or that is in the staff report. Town recommendation. On June 14th, the Town of Rib Falls Town Board recommended approval to the Marathon County's Environmental Resource Committee. Conclusions of law. Number 1, the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan relies on the Town Comprehensive Plan regarding specific land uses and zoning districts for individual parcels. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown to be designated as agriculture in the town's future land use map. CPZ staff rely on the towns to make recommendations given the town board members and residents know their town and the true purpose and intent of the plan. The area in question was not designated as farmland preservation. The Town of Rib Falls does not participate in farmland preservation zoning. As indicated by the town's resolution, it appears the rezone is consistent with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. Number 2, no farmland will be consumed. Number 3, the need is related to a proposed land division. 3B, all necessary public facilities anticipated to be provided, given any proposed development, would rely on private systems such as private well and sanitary system. 3C, no anticipated burden on local government. All applicable building, construction, and use standards will be applied during the zoning and building permit review process. Number 4, all federal, state, and local permits and approvals are required for any applicable development on site. Additionally, the proposed rezone will likely not result in any unreasonable air or water pollution, as all pertinent regulations and regulations apply and will need to be adhered to. Any disturbance greater than 1 acre would need a DNR stormwater management permit. Number 5, the Town of Rib Falls Town Board recommended approval of this petition. Number 6, the county was not made aware of any concerns from other agencies. Staff recommendations, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the true purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan as indicated by the town's resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Shad. Any questions? Okay, seeing, hearing none, thank you, we'll move on. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone? We are on item 5A4 for Draggers Dairy Farm General Ag to Rural Residential in the town of Rib Falls. Please identify yourself at this time. Call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing, hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone for item 5A4, please identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak as interested? Okay, seeing and hearing none, that no one else wishes to testify on this matter, I am now declaring the public hearing for Draggers Dairy Farm General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of River Falls, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application and apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Fairly straightforward. What is the pleasure of the committee?
I'll make a motion to approve the petition of the Draggers Dairy Farm, Inc. to amend the general code ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17, zoning code to rezone the lands from general agriculture to rural residential based upon the conclusions in law and recommendations.
Motion by Supervisor Overbeck. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the proposed rezone, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Last one, 5A5, Draggers Dairy Farm General Ag to Low Density Residential, Town of River Falls. Go ahead, Chad.
Draggers Dairy Farm, Inc., petition to rezone land, staff report, July 5th, 2022, Environmental Resource Committee. The petitioner again is James Drager, 237-588 Schoolhouse Lane, Marathon, Wisconsin, 54448. Property owners, Draggers Dairy Farm, Inc., address 237-588 Schoolhouse Lane, Marathon, Wisconsin, 54448. Location of the rezone request, area proposed to be rezoned is in the town of Rib Falls, just south of the intersection of Sky Falls Drive and Schoolhouse Lane. Request the petition of Draggers Dairy Farm, Inc. to amend General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from general agriculture to LDR, low density residential, described as part of the southeast quarter of the fractional northeast quarter of Section 2, Township 29 North, Range 5 East, Town of Rib Falls. The area proposed to be rezoned is described as part of Lot 2 on the preliminary certified survey map submitted with the rezone petition. Part of the parent parcel PIN number 066-2905-021-0996. Public hearings and meetings. Town of Rib Falls Town Board meeting on June 14th, 2022. Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee meeting today, July 5th, 2022 at 3 p.m. Legal notification. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Existing zoning district is general agriculture. The area proposed to be rezoned is currently shown as agriculture and residential uses. Proposed zoning district, LDR, low density residential. The town's comprehensive future land use map, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as forestry, agriculture, and residential in the town's comprehensive future land use map. Adjacent land uses are comprised of similar uses. Farmland Preservation, the town of Rib Falls does not participate in farmland preservation. Below is a aerial photo of the parcel. Town recommendation. On June 14th, 2022, the Town of Rib Falls Town Board recommended approval to the Marathon County's Environmental Resource Committee. Conclusions of law. Number 1, the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan relies on the Town Comprehensive Plan regarding specific land uses and zoning districts for individual parcels. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown to be designated as residential and agriculture in the town's future land use map. CPZ staff rely on the towns to make these recommendations, given the town board members and residents know their town and true purpose and intent of the plan. The town of Rib Falls does not participate in farmland preservation zoning, as indicated by the town's future land use map and the town's resolution. It appears the rezone is consistent with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. Number 2, no farmland will be consumed. Number 3, A, the need is for a proposed land division. 3B, all necessary public facilities are anticipated to be provided, given any proposed development would rely off public or private systems such as a private well or sanitary system. 3C, no anticipated burden on local government. All applicable building construction and use standards would be applied during the zoning and building permit process. Number 4, all federal, state, and local permits and approvals are required for any applicable development on site. Additionally, the proposed rezone will likely not result in any unreasonable air or water pollution, as all pertinent regulations apply and will need to be adhered to. Any disturbance greater than 1 acre would need a DNR stormwater management permit. Number 5, the town of Rib Falls, town board has recommended approval to this rezone petition. All concerns from other agencies on the proposed rezone have been addressed. The county was not made aware of any concerns from other agencies. CPZ staff recommendations. The rezone meets all the district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimensions. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan as indicated by the town's resolution. Based on the information provided, findings of facts, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Shad. Any questions for staff? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on. Anybody from the public wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, item 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone for item 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone? Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested the proposed rezone 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak as interested? Okay. If no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing on item 5A5, Drager's Dairy Farm, General Ag to Low Density Residential, Town of Rib Falls, now closed. One thing I do want to note, and I apologize for trying to not trying, but might accidentally have convoluted the process a little bit. Supervisor Seefeld, I realize you were referencing the petition, so your motions were in order, and so were Supervisor Oberbeck, so I apologize for that. So, like I said, I think I might have accidentally overcomplicated things, but you're good. That being said, what's the pleasure of the committee? Now everybody's scared to make a motion because the chair is going to say something. Okay, Supervisor
Are we
Drayback.
supposed to be using the mics or not?
I believe so.
But I mean,
Which,
we haven't been, so I didn't know. That
Oh.
set a precedence, so, you know.
well, this one isn't on, so I guess we got to start with this. And this one's flashing red at me. Well, that's a good one.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
Lance has got one.
Interesting.
There's one
yeah,
right there.
I can yell loud enough, I think.
We did.
Well, or, hold on. Pass the mic.
All right.
There you go. You got the big mic.
All right, thank you. I would just want to make a motion that we would make a motion to approve the rezone for Drager Dairy Farm, Inc., from general ag to rural residential based on the finding of fact and conclusions of law.
There you go. All right. Now we got to pass back. Okay. Put that right there for now. There's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Vensky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Times that can feel like a rubber stamp, but we should just appreciate when everything is agreeable. All right. Moving on to 5B, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. Town zoning changes pursuant to Wisconsin statute 60.62 sub 3. We have none. 5AC, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration, we have none. And 5D, review and possible action, we have none. 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports and committee discussion. 6A, department updates, conservation planning and zoning, park rec and forestry, solid waste. And our first item we have here is the strategic plan objectives. Continued discussion from the June meeting. Give you all a little bit of an update before I pass things off to Vice Chair McEwen. The executive committee, during their meeting in June, had a little bit more of discussion regarding what this next iteration of the strategic plan is going to look like, with the intention that they are not going to scrap the entire plan and start fresh, because the basis of the current plan is perfectly reasonable going forward. That being said, as you heard last month, we do want to have some discussion updating the priorities that we have. During the June meeting for the executive committee, I believe most of the committees are in similar situations where we are, where we're just beginning these discussions. So right now, we're doing the follow-up to that first meeting, where we're actually going to have some discussion based on everybody's ability to review that information before today's meeting. Vice Chair McEwen, would you like to provide more information and start things off?
Thank you. You gave me a real nice mic here, but it's not plugged in, so I had to seal this, and I don't know if that's a hint. You don't want me to be heard, but anyways, thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the last ERC meeting on May 31st, we had a discussion on the 2018-2022 strategic plan. During that discussion, I felt that we needed to update the current plan and extend it for 2 years, and the feedback from the committee I felt was agreeable with that, with moving forward. Not scrapping the plan, but updating it. And as your chair mentioned, we had a discussion with the executive committee, and long story short, the consensus was that this current strategic plan, which is due to expire at the end of this year, should be updated and not completely scrapped, due to the fact that the last 2 years was a little exceptional with the pandemic. But overall, the current strategic plan is worthwhile keeping but updating. There were 3 questions that I asked each of the committees, including yours, at the last meeting. Are there any new strategies you feel needed to be added to the existing objectives? Are there should any of the strategies be prioritized, that they're listed A through F and they're not listed in any priority? Just asked if any of those should be prioritized. And the last one, are there any objectives or strategies from the comp plan that should be added to the strategic plan? Now, during our discussion at your last committee meeting, I know there were some requests from committee members asking that they be provided with some updates or accomplishments on the current objectives that this committee is the lead committee for, which is 5.2 and 6.3 of the strategic plan. And I want to thank Administrator Leonard and all the department heads and their staff who provided the current updates and progress made on each of these objectives. I know Administrator Leonard sent out an email yesterday with these updates, which were provided by the department heads. And they are, I don't know if Administrator Leonard is able to bring those up, or if you have, I don't know if you can refer back to your emails and then go back to the agenda, but the main objective was to discuss with this committee 5.2 and the 6.3, which this committee is the lead committee for. And what I want to emphasize is there are 64 objectives in the comp plan. We brought 12 of those objectives forward. And of those objectives, there were strategies and outcome measures that were provided as far as implementing the strategic plan. Now, with these updates that are provided, they're on the TV screen up there. If you don't have to refer back to your emails of starting with 5.2, and I'm just requesting at this time. I don't know if the chair wants to go into the updates that were provided for each one of the strategies. There's 6 of them listed under 5.2. If so, like I said, we can review each one of those updates with current strategies that are underneath that objective. Would you like to have a discussion on them, Mr. Chair? There's updates for 5.2 and 6.3.
Are you referencing the memorandum provided for the packet, Supervisor, or Vice Chair McEwen?
No, it was a separate email that was sent from the administrator, but I can't see the screen above me, but it's basically starting with I'm just going to yours. There's a updates on all the objectives, but starting with 5.2, which is
I think we're referencing the same item. I think it was in our packet for today.
I think it's pretty close. You have a bigger summary from all the committees, right, Lance? And then, yeah, so in your packet, the summary of the updates for 5.2 and 6.3, which are the
Yep.
ERCs, were included.
Okay, that
So-
begins on page 90 for the,
But I don't know, Lance, did you make an additional, or did you want to add anything additional there? Yeah.
Sure, I can just, building on what Vice Chair McEwen referenced, you all should have gotten an email. Essentially, all I did was I compiled all the information for all of the objectives as Lori had indicated. She provided in your packet your specific, strategic plan progress updates. I included in my email to all of you all of the respective objective updates in the event you wanted to discuss something that perhaps wasn't solely within the purview of this committee. You certainly can do that. I did stamp that document draft, and as I alluded to in my email, the reason I did that is we essentially tried to accomplish in 2.5 weeks what I think the last time we did a strategic plan update took us over 6 months. So the level of quality control, I'll be very frank with you, we didn't do the amount of review we normally would, but I think the document gives you the information you need to kind of have a more informed discussion, as the Vice Chair referenced. But happy to answer any questions you might have. I do have the document that I'm sharing on your screen, and I did scroll in the email that I sent to all of you to Objective 5.2, but as Lori referenced, within your packet, you do have the document that Lori provided with respect to the substantive updates to the 2 objectives referenced. There are some minor formatting changes and perhaps some language changes I made to make it more consistent as a single document, but the substance is essentially the same.
Thank you.
Supervisor Overbeck.
Thank you. Just one question. This came up in a discussion about a year ago about, let's say, 5.2E, about developing a comprehensive approach to redevelopment and revitalization of older housing stock and older buildings. Does the county have an inventory of historically significant structures throughout the county outside? One of the questions was, we have the city of Wausau with their Historic Preservation Commission, which I serve on. We continually evaluate different historic properties and evaluate whether it's worthy of saving them, assisting with them. I think that would be valuable with that directive to start looking at something for Marathon County to make sure that we maintain some of that integrity of these older structures within the county that provide interest and also assist with bringing people into the county. Say the Rothschild Pavilion, the courthouses, the different things, city halls that are out there. It might be worthy of doing that inventory and then start looking at how we assist or start working with towns or villages to I guess, save those facilities.
That I'm not sure. I don't know if Administrator Leonard or
I think we have that. but.
Yeah, I don't believe within our code we have anything as it relates to a historic preservation ordinance.
Oh, yeah, no.
I will say, my understanding of what that, and I'd certainly defer to people that were here when the comprehensive plan was put in place, because again, this objective along with this strategy were pulled from that document. My understanding, however, is that, or my inference is that the intent of that section is to not specifically aimed at preservation of historic structures, but rather revitalization of, for lack of a better term, and this is perhaps more pejorative than is intended, but dilapidated structures, to have a program in place to address those needs on a county-wide basis. And I'll let you know of one that I'm aware of. La Crosse County has a grant fund that they've established. It's been in place for a number of years now, that the county board has identified the program parameters that then individuals can make application to that program for those grant dollars to revitalize existing housing stock, that is, address dilapidated buildings within defined areas within the county. And they've identified several municipalities within the county that they're initially targeting with that grant program. So my belief is that there's the desire of the board through the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan adoption of this objective was to look at such an approach for revitalization and redevelopment of those sort of older housing stock and buildings.
Yes, Marilyn, go ahead.
Would any of these proposals override what the local municipality might have in enforcement? Or would the local enforcement still be with the local municipality and not the county?
I will defer to our
Yeah,
people that
I'm looking
understand
at
our
it.
code very well, but right now, let me just make very clear, I don't believe you have one of these. So the strategy is, under this objective, is to develop an approach for redevelopment and revitalization of older housing stock and older buildings. Certainly, the county has programs that do target certain housing stock for redevelopment. The best example, I'm sure you're all familiar with, you've seen this before, is when we take properties via tax deed for non-payment, very often those are dilapidated buildings in need of revitalization. We have worked with, to your point, Marilyn, we have worked with municipalities when a municipality has a property that they're interested in for redevelopment that is a tax delinquent parcel. There's a provision within the statutes that allows for that municipality to have kind of one of the first opportunities to procure that from the county for redevelopment. So I hesitate to weigh in on whether or not the county its role would supersede, because you don't have, the county, Marathon County does not have, as far as I understand, a program in the vein that I just described with La Crosse County. But I would foresee, certainly should you wish to do that, there's a real opportunity for the cooperation or collaboration that you just kind of alluded to between the home municipality and the county.
Marilyn?
You know, I'm coming from town government. You know, we like to have local control, you know, but I do like the idea of grants being available through the county that the municipalities can use to update those dilapidated and things that need fixed up.
Okay. I was a little interested as to how discussion for this particular agenda item would roll out today. I think the first thing that I at least need with this discussion, and it might be more of a question directed towards the vice chair, is it a question of strategy as far as under each of those objectives there are the strategies that are identified for each of the standing committees or the responsible ones, or is it a question of the outcome measures? That's where I'm getting confused, because there are some outcome measures that we've completed. Like we've updated our groundwater plan, right? or the land and water plan, I should say. But yet, the strategies themselves, because they're more broad policy, mission-directed goals for the county to achieve, I should say, that's where I get confused. Or is it a question of prioritizing each of these items, or whether or not one of them needs to shift as far as what needs to be more of an emphasis for the committee?
Well, thank you. Your
And
first,
don't say all the above.
I'm going to say both.
Great.
Is that okay?
Okay.
And what I mean by that is with the three questions that were presented, are there any strategies you feel need to be added to the existing objectives? So your objective 5.2 or 6.3, are there any strategies or are there any outcome measures you feel need to be added under these 5.2 or 6.3? And like I said, as far as the strategies, that if there's an outcome measure, there's got to be a strategy. So like I said, it's actually both. But what we're looking for in the long run, I guess, is we want the committees to review the objectives that they are the lead committees, like yours, 5.2, 6.3. In their comp plan, the executive plan, it lists the 9 objectives for 5.2. It doesn't list the 31 strategies that are under all 9 of them. And like I said, there's 6 strategies under 5.2. And I don't know if you were involved in the comp plan when we developed it. We knew that we couldn't bring 64 objectives to the county board. So we chose to pick one out of each one of them. And for instance, the chapter 5, which is natural resources, we picked 5.2. Now, that doesn't mean that 5.1 or 3, 4, down to 9, are any of those objectives, do you feel, need to be added under this 5.2? And are there any strategies that you think need to be added? If you say you just bring 5.3, which is mitigate and adapt to climate change impacts, what would be the strategies on that? There would be a different strategy for that. But like I said, the committees, when this was developed in 2016, many things have changed, and along with that, the strategic plan, a lot of things were accomplished, like you referred to. So is there something else, could something else be added in under that strategy, or that objective, I should say?
Go ahead, Supervisor Overbeck.
Yeah, I guess with that same tone, I wasn't definitely looking at historic buildings, but within the fabric, looking at it as an architect, a lot of the buildings that are dilapidated are sometimes in urban areas, even though, out in rural townships or whatever, but they're significant in keeping the community together. And part of that is zoning, how they can be reused. It's important, we talk about the West Side Master Plan. That's really a redevelopment plan that was started several years ago by Main Street, and it continued into different areas, and the same with social services building as a reuse of that building within the city of Wausau. But I'm talking about throughout Marathon County, because I think there's a lot of, there's potential in saving some of these facilities that are worthy of saving. Some of these buildings need to be torn down, and that's got to be a decision made. But evaluating those types of facilities and then putting them on a watch list or whatever of how you fix those up, and looking for grants that can be given to maintain those areas, such as, a smaller town. And, the village of Rothschild was very close to tearing down the Rothschild Pavilion. That was very close until we saved it. Similar type facilities. But if we can identify those and have those on a county map, I think that speaks to a comprehensive approach at addressing some of those dilapidated buildings, because a lot of them are, out of the early 1900s or whatever, and need help, and no one's willing to take them on. So maybe they need some guidance through, if this committee would take that on.
Thank you. If just quickly, if I may, Mr. Chair, and I was looking through all the strategies underneath five,
5.2.
well,
Land
5.2, under Chapter 5, Natural Resource. I don't see anything, and you're right, I don't see anything in there indicating the importance of what you were speaking to as far as, historical buildings. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't be in there, I'm just saying it's not at this point, and that would be up to, this committee if there's some way they could, fit it into 5, under Chapter 5 somewhere, but that would be totally up to this committee, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your comments there, Vice Chair. And I think I would actually offer that the project, the goal that Supervisor Overbeck just suggested might already be contained under 5.2. Because the first question I have, and this would be one for staff, is what exactly is a land capability index?
So I'll give what I understand on the history there in terms of where that came from, and Lance, if you can add to it. Okay, he's looking at me like, no. My understanding is that when this one was put into the comprehensive plan, the objective was to look at economic development. So that's where that came from. And so that was to look at industrial and commercial areas in the county to see basically that we were developing in the right way there. And I see Supervisor Overbeck nodding his head, so maybe he remembers that discussion too, but that's my understanding of where it came from. We don't have anyone in our staff that is purely dedicated to economic development. We don't, so there hasn't been any progress made on that. I can say that much.
Sure. And the other item I would say is that under strategy E under 5.2, it says develop a comprehensive approach to redevelopment and revitalization to older housing stock and older buildings. Well, it's not necessarily in the scope that Supervisor Overbeck is suggesting there. You go out and you identify each one of those buildings, but I think in spirit, it's definitely a part of strategy E, which is under 5.2 currently in that strat plan, right? So it's interesting because the objectives, I think the ERC could definitely oversee the same two objectives of 5.2 and 6.3, because those are the objectives that are most pertinent to this committee. As far as the strategies themselves, I'd certainly be open to discussion of what might need to change under those. As far as the outcome measures, well, those I would think would have to be updated as soon as you agree on the strategies. Am I correct, Vice Chair?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Any thoughts from the committee? And then I would ask, of course, staff already provided the summary provided in your packet, but I had talked with the director last month, and they had asked that they provide some information. If it's just walking us through those objectives, that's perfectly fine too. But anything from the committee at this point? No? Lori, did you have anything to add?
Did you want to speak on land capability first, and then I can go back to the rest? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
Just very briefly. This is exactly the conversation as staff, selfishly, I want you to have. What needs to be the priority over if this plan is extended and amended, where do we need to focus our effort? Because Lori is 100% correct. Some of these objectives, and you really see it when you look into the document that was sent to the full board, all the members, with respect to all of the various objectives, we have never, as Lori referenced, had dedicated economic development staff that are county staff. We have partnered with McDevco. We have provided funding to McDevco, Marathon County Development Corporation, for various initiatives. Perfect example is a revolving loan fund and gap financing. But Marathon County does not have an economic development professional within conservation planning and zoning or the rest of the county. We have people that have some experience doing economic development work in conservation planning and zoning, but we don't have those jobs. If that's something you want us to do, we can come back to you if you tell us, really what we want is not to amend 5.2, but we really want the county to take what would it look like if we did develop this comprehensive approach for redevelopment. And we did develop a we wanted really to develop a land capability index. We could come back to you and say, hey, these are the things, the resources you would need to bring to bear to do that. Because we don't have those people doing that work right now. If that's the direction from the committee, then go to the executive committee and ultimately the full board to approve some revision to the plan, that would be greatly appreciated from staff, because it provides us direction on where our time, energy, and effort should go.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, referring to E, I guess my feeling was is older stock buildings that Marathon County owns, like with the West Side Master Plan and the Social Service Building. But you could certainly, as Supervisor Overbeck, I think you could fit it in underneath, this strategy. But it would have to be, there'd have to be a specific strategy listing that, not just, I guess we own, and if I'm wrong, Administrator Lynn, we own like 1,100 buildings, or 1,100 properties. Some might be 3 by 5 pieces of land, but we don't. I don't know that we really understand all the properties, buildings that Marathon County owns, and some of those might be historical. I don't know. So probably most of them aren't. They're probably buildings or houses that we take for tax levy or tax purposes. But if this committee, and that's exactly what I wanted the discussion with this committee about, what are your feelings about the objectives and the strategies that are in there, and does anything else have to be added, maybe taken out of there? I'm not sure. There was a couple of them. There was one where there was no, can't remember where it was in Lori's update, that as far as trying to
Not to interrupt you, Mr. Chair, but a perfect example, what you're suggesting is under 6.3 Strategy A, you can toss that one right out because we already have a new plan. I think that's speaking to what you're trying to say.
Yeah, those were accomplished.
To be correct, we don't have an updated groundwater protection plan. We have a land and water resource management plan.
There's a difference between the two. Yes. Never mind, we'll keep that one in there. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to find the one that Laurie, maybe you could help me, one that wants to be changed or a different way to.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll tell you really quick, I mean, we took a quick internal look at this as well in terms of the strategies and the outcomes. And, like Lance said, we have not made any progress on the land capability index. I think there's a discussion that needs to be had there as it relates to what this county wants to do as it relates to economic development, and we need more discussion and direction there. So I think our suggestion would be to reconsider that strategy, rework it so we have a little more direction there. I think as it relates to some of the outcome measures, like the outcome measures for 5.2, we certainly are making progress towards reducing phosphorus. I think there's things, we could consider additional strategies that could be taken there to get that number closer to where we want it to be. We've had a lot of discussion internally about the 4 towns into county zoning. We definitely recommend a different outcome here. We think the bigger point needs to be about good education as it relates to zoning across the county, but we're not sure yet. We haven't settled on what an outcome might look like as it relates to that, but I think we would like to see just our whole county feel they understand zoning and what they can do with it, as opposed to being fixated on how many towns we get into county zoning. So we would definitely like consideration of a different outcome there. And then I know we do have somebody on the phone from Parks who can speak to the 320 acres of land, average of 320 acres of land acquiring from Marathon County every year for Parks and Forests, because I think at this point we're averaging about 100, what did we come up with? Average has been about 11 acres a year of park and 140 acres a year of forest land, but the long-range plans in Parks and Forestry do still state that 320 acre goal. So I think Tom Loveland can speak to that in just a minute. But as it relates to the water resources goal, objective 6.3, again, we have, we do believe the groundwater protection plan update strategy does need to stay, because we are planning to begin work on that in 2023. And then there's some additional strategies here. I think most of them we think are good in practice, and we just need to continue working towards them. As it relates to the outcomes, though, we talked internally about reconsideration of outcome measure 3, reducing the animal waste discharge to surface and groundwater by closing idle animal waste facilities via ordinance guidelines. We've had some discussions internally that there might be a better outcome measure we could go to as it relates to surface and groundwater discharge. But I'll let Tom speak on outcome measure 3 under 5.2. Still on the line.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom, thanks.
Okay, yeah, I think Lori did a good job at explaining that. We, in our County Forest Comprehensive Land Use Plan, we've identified an average of 200 acres a year that we would shoot for forest land, and then 120 acres a year in our county outdoor recreation plan for parks. And those are long-range plans, and what we're looking at is if we had an opportunity to purchase a lot of acres in a short time, and the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program would still be up and running to match for 50% of our land acquisition costs, we could meet or exceed those goals. So I had a discussion with Forestry Recreation Committee Chair Rick Seefeld today, and we both agreed that those should stay in the plan, and that's what we're recommending.
Anything from the committee members? One thing I was looking at in regards to the strategies and the objectives, being that, you know, the departments that, you know, we serve as a standing committee for, you know, is their work accurately reflected under these objectives? And I think, you know, you could definitely make the argument that definitely the land use and the groundwater definitely leans into the work that, you know, conservation, planning and zoning does. But as to Tom's point with the outcomes, with acquiring the parkland, that speaks to the work that they do. So, you know, I think that the way I'm trying to approach this discussion, and maybe some of the other committee members are too, is that if you look at the work that the county is doing today, is that an accurate reflection of what you see in this plan right now? And if you'd like that work to change, well, then we have to have a discussion about what these objectives should be, or if we have to add additional objectives. It sounds like the staff have created some, or have provided some feedback as far as what they would like to see remain in the plan. You know, I guess I'm at a little loss for words, because when I look at this plan, this is the work that I want the county to be doing. I want them to protect groundwater. I want there to be sound land use decisions. And I understand that if you go, you know, all the way at the end of the comp plan under Chapter 6, you're going to see 4 other strategies. Correct? No, those are objectives. The ones that the letters are the strategies. Or if you look at Chapter 5, you're going to have 9 objectives and a lot of strategies under each one of these.
31 strategies.
31 strategies. Thank you, Vice Chair. So, like I said, I think that the way to frame it is that, like, the work that you would like to see the county do, is that reflected in the current plan? That's the way that I'm viewing it. And I myself, as the chair, and maybe I'm biased because I've been here for 8 years, and some of you have also been here for a number of terms, and I'm used to seeing the work that's being done be done. Maybe there's a perspective thing here that I'm not seeing, but I see those 2 objectives, and they make perfect sense to this for my view of what the staff does, or at least what they should be doing. Not saying you're not doing it. I do believe you are. So, Vice Chair or anybody else add anything? Supervisor Ritter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering for the groundwater plan, with the climate of PFAS that we're hearing about today, if we could add to that, take a look at the effects of spreading the city city waste on the farm fields and see the long-term effects that's going to have on our groundwater.
Thank you, Supervisor. And it's interesting that you bring that item up because when I was reviewing the comp plan, maybe I missed it, but I could not find mention specifically of PFAS in the plan.
I don't believe in 2016 anybody was aware of PFAS. That's why we're talking about we're discussing the updates, because that is an issue now. You know, theoretically, the county doesn't have a city water department, but as Supervisor Ritter brought up, that doesn't mean it can't somehow be transferred into our, wells or the rural areas. But maybe I haven't been listening, but I never heard of PFAS up until about a year and a half ago when they started coming up. So that is an issue that wasn't around for us to discuss. It was just, keeping the groundwater clean, and that would be part of it. I mean, and that's a very good example.
Okay, so to Supervisor Ritter's point then, with PFAS, that is an example of an item that has become a potential area of work for the county, but the potential is limited to what the county can actually do about that particular topic. So if we were going to, and I think it's worth having a discussion over, don't get me wrong, but part of that discussion has to be what is the extent of the county's impact when it comes to that particular item. As Vice Chair McEwen noted, the city water department typically is going to be the ones responsible for the PFAS related issues within those urban communities. In regards to the sludge, I've heard from a number of farmers that they're concerned about, spreading sludge onto their fields and whether or not that will get into their wells and, and whether or not there's a safety concern there. So I would definitely be interested in having a discussion with PFAS. And maybe to allude back to what I said earlier, not in the sense that we connect everything from the strategic plan directly to that comp plan, but when I prepared for this discussion today, really hammered in on the comp plan itself and didn't think about the current state of the world that we live in and how that might impact this strat plan. I think PFAS is a very worthwhile item to consider implementing. So, and I think that would fall under, item, was it 6.3 for the water?
Yes.
Yep, there you go. Okay. Supervisor Overbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along with that, maybe one of our tasks as the Environmental Resource Committee in protecting our groundwater and everything is to review county procedures. I've brought up the salt being spread and different things. One of the things that was, I think, on social media right after the PFAS was announced was the fact that a lot of us were probably spreading Milorganite on our lawns, and that definitely had it. It was tested for it, so from Milwaukee. So I think there's maybe the procedures just have to be looked at throughout the county, and that comes through this committee as far as identifying potential, groundwater contaminants and things like that.
Thank you. And I believe under 6.3 or 6.3A update, the 2001 groundwater protection plan. I don't know if that's what you're referring to or if that needs to be updated from 2001 or if it has been.
No, we have a proposal going forward to start data collection in 2023 for the groundwater protection plan update.
Thank you. So I guess, with further discussion on the committees, and the reason we're kind of in a crunch time is if the administrator's budget, the department head's budgets, they all reflect the strategic plan and the comp plan. So if we're going to change some priorities or add some priorities, I think in fairness, we need to let the staff know what those priorities are. And, and that's the county board's decision to do that. So I know probably the administrator's already starting on his budget for next year, but, you know, the point is the discussions were great here to look at these two objectives, which infrastructure, ERC is lead on. And there are, like I said, you have a lot of other strategies underneath a lot of these 5.2 and 6.3, but we didn't identify those back in 2016. In fact, there was a supervisor on there, and you probably know who it was. He wanted to hire a visionary. And I thought, well, we don't have time for people running around in ghost suits and stuff like that. But anyways, he actually probably had a good idea back then to look down the road as to what problems we could foresee, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But you know, we put this plan together, and I know, Mr. Chairman, it was I think a 2-year process to do the comp plan, and then 2-year process to put the strategic plan together. That doesn't mean it's perfect, because things have changed, and that's what we need to know from this committee. 5.2, 6.3, is there anything you want changed, you want added, you want out? And then those discussions are going to go to executive and then to the board, because we would like to adopt an updated strategic plan soon.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair. I think to the committee's credit here, I think you can infer a couple things. One is that 5.2 and 6.3 aren't going to change. I would even say that the strategies are fairly solidified there as well. What we do need to have some reflection on, I think, is the outcome measures. And I do really want to revisit the discussion that we had here about PFAS. And to the extent of what our staff can actually do about that particular item, whether or not we can possibly adopt a strategy under 6.3 to, you know, fulfill the county's role, whatever it might be in regards to that particular item. So that's what I'm inferring from the discussion today. The second point I wanted to make, of course, is that a question like that is going to take time. So you had alluded to the time crunch as far as the executive committee's ability to review that product before taking that to the county board. Do you anticipate that happening in August, Vice Chair, or potentially in September?
August would be great, but I don't believe that is going to be possible, especially with the discussions just starting last month and now this month. But I guess I'll defer to the administrator. We want to adopt a new updated strategic plan before the end of the year, because this one is expired in 2022.
Well, it's an interesting point, because you had mentioned the timeline with the last strat plan, and granted that was a fully finished brand new product, but we're asking to do an update now in a couple months, which it's the nature of the beast. There's no really good time of year to actually do it, right?
Yes.
This time it's just, you know, more of a difficult timing, of course. I apologize, Administrator Leonard.
I think that's great discussion. And again, selfishly, the thing that I'm always looking at is, and I think Chair Langenhan, you summed it up perfectly. Do you like the things we're working on or not? If you want us to do different things, my ask of you is to please tell us. The way you tell us what to spend our time on is through the comprehensive plan, even more so the strategic plan, and finally my annual work plan that I develop and then work with the various departments to try to accomplish. That is 100% what I'm asking you to continue to consider. I think Chair Langenhan said it better than I can. If you like what we're doing, I really appreciate that feedback, and we'll keep doing it. If you want us to prioritize certain things, please let us know, and we'll do that. But, you know, I have heard some discussion about, you know, this idea that, you know, hey, this is a new board, and that is true. You have a new term. You're many new board members. But the strategic plan, make no mistake, is the board's strategic plan. If you want to change it, you are empowered to change it. And until you change it, we're going to keep working on the things that are in it. So again, that's my ask, is really to approach it from that very foundational question that Supervisor Langenhan posed, which is, do you like where the county departments are spending their time and the things they're spending their time on trying to achieve? Now, you all know that there are some things that, even if you didn't like that the county departments were doing, there are some things by statute we have to do. But in those areas where we have room to grow and room to determine what our work looks like, I mean, we are not the policymakers, make no mistake. The recommendations you've heard today, if you feel differently, you are 100% empowered to change those. We brought up the outcome measure relative to how many acres of parkland and how many acres of forest land you want us to provide or to attempt to acquire. And Tom can certainly tell you all the good things about doing that and how it benefits the county. At the end of the day, that is a policy decision, whether we continue that goal. I will tell you, it's also within your, it's not only within your comprehensive plan and your strategic plan, it's also within your county outdoor recreation plan that goes through 2024. So there are other policy documents that, again, just please change. If you have a difference of opinion, recommend that those things get changed, because until they are changed, staff are going to keep working on them. So that's all I had. Thank you very much, and the discussion's been very helpful thus far.
Chairman, what I'd like is I'd like you to prioritize.
Hold on, let's get Marilyn on mic. That works. I'm just trying to think of the people online, so hopefully.
I would like for them to prioritize what the chairman has said, about the PFAS. I think that should be one of the top priorities, because it is going to cause great problems, and we need to deal with that now. And so it is something new. I think it should be towards the top of the list on the groundwater.
Vice Chair McEwen.
So our county conservationist said she could also offer some additional information on the PFAS if you want to hear more, or we could bring it back to the next meeting as well. So yeah.
Well, because PFAS wasn't on the agenda for today, this was supposed to be directed towards strategic plan discussion. Here's what I'll say, and I appreciate the county conservationist's willingness. We're going to have to explore this item if we do want to put it as part of the comp plan strategies. Let's talk about it next month, because I'd envision having the discussion before we take any formal action to recommend changes to the strat plan. Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate the discussion and what you said earlier, that 5.2 and 6.3 aren't going away. It might be some of the outcome measures, and that I mean, not going away, but changing or adapting. And like I said, under the 6.3 with the 2001 groundwater protection plan, that may be where you could fit, and I'm just assuming that could be the discussion with the PFAS, if that could be, aligned with that. But if there's not a lot of strategies, the 6.3 and the 5.2 aren't going away. We know that this committee's more than capable of dealing with and has been. It's just the strategies and the outcome measures. And like I said, I don't think we're just trying to retrofit this strategic plan to the current issues that we have now that we didn't have back then. And I don't know how difficult that's going to be. You have 2 objectives. There's a couple committees that have 3. Some have 1. Some have none. But like I said, I do appreciate that. And like I said, could you fit that? You wouldn't have to change. You could change the strategy under that update for the groundwater protection to include PFAS. One of the strategies or outcome measures.
And that's an excellent point. And then that speaks to, it sounds like from the committee that it's definitely a priority. Well, then, if it's a priority, let's review the current prioritization of the plan and let's say that it falls under the groundwater protection plan, and right now it currently is strategy A. So, having that discussion, it would all seem to fall in place. One thing I will say, in regards to reviewing the information today and the other objectives included under chapters 5 and 6 in the comp plan, I would just say these two not only seem the most important to me, but on top of that, they are also the most broad. They encompass even some of the work of those other objectives. So if we were a committee that said we looked at all of our objectives and somehow we lived in a magical Christmas land that we accomplished everything perfectly that we outlined 6 years ago, or I should say 4 years ago, well then I could say let's add some more objectives. But I would really say that 5.2 and 6.3 is where we need to put our priorities in right now. And I understand that there's a beauty in that vision behind that comp plan, which is, yeah, a lot of that work is going to get done anyway and is going to trickle out under the objectives that we didn't necessarily include into the strat plan. Some of that stuff's going to get accomplished naturally, and that's great. I just think that for 5.2 and 6.3, that's the work that we do, and we want to be successful in that particular work. I think that's where we need to keep taking these discussions, with the exception that let's have a honest discussion about PFAS and see where that works under our current framework. The way I see it, I think there's definitely value in having those discussions. Anything else from the committee? Supervisor Unger.
I don't know. Just a quick question, and I might have missed this, but under 5.2, the outcome measure 3, the 320 acres of land per year to be acquired by Marathon County. Where did that number come from? I mean, maybe Tom could answer that, or and then it says acquire. So are we buying it, or is it taxes? I mean, back tax? I don't know. How are we acquiring that? And then my third thing was with the cost of real estate, if we are buying it, I mean, I suppose we get to the budget on that part of it. Just a little explanation on those acreage.
Sure, I can try to answer that question.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep. In our last Forest Comprehensive Land Use Plan revision, which goes from 2021 to 2035, the public actually weighed in, and what we heard from the public on surveys is they'd like to see Marathon County acquire more land for the public to use. So over the last two planning periods, we've had approximately 200 acres a year on average over the planning period, at least in the forestry side, to try to acquire. So we only acquire lands that from willing sellers. So what we look to do is potentially block in county forest lands to add to the county forest. And we use a state Knowles-Nelson stewardship program that provides 50% match for acquisitions. It's a grant that the county does not have to pay back. And then we've got a segregated land purchase account within the county forest that we use to match that. So those are the monies that we use primarily for those purchases. But 200 acres a year has been sort of what we've come up with, that we put in the plan. And just for example, in 2006 and 7, there was some land that came up around the Ringel Forest Unit, 1,100 acres from Mosinee Paper Company that the county voted to purchase, and we used a loan, interest-free loan from the state for that, matched with some ATC money and some segregated land purchase money. So, in short, there are funding opportunities through the state grants, and then we get some money through the forestry segregated land purchase account to match that. And on the park side, they have a land and forest products account, which they sell gravel and get revenues for that gravel that's been designated for land purchases. So from what I understand, specific tax levy has not been used to purchase those lands.
Thank you, Tom. Administrator Leonard, I think you had something to add?
Yep, perfect. And Tom, just to kind of emphasize again what you're talking about, we not only purchase property, you want to talk briefly about, our historical practice of if we have parcels that are targeted, they are adjacent to an existing county forest, how we have historically taken, we have traded property that the county has owned for those high-value parcels. We also have accepted donations. And then lastly, Tom, can you talk to what we do in partnership with local towns, how they're impacted if the county acquires a piece of property and enrolls it in county forest, what financial benefit they may receive?
Sure. So if we purchase land, every town that has county forest land, we share 10% of our timber proceeds with those towns for a payment in lieu of taxes. That payment to each of the towns is based upon how many acres on average or collectively that they have within the town. So say that the town of Gunther has 20% of the acreage of the 30,000 plus acres we own, they would get 20% of that payment. In addition, the towns also receive a payment which was 30 cents an acre all the way back from 1986 through 2021. There was recent legislation that increased that payment to 63 cents per acre. So not only do they get the 30 cents or the 10% timber proceeds, they get 63 cents an acre paid through the state of Wisconsin directly to those towns. So it's sort of a payment in lieu of taxes, if you will. And then before any purchase that we want to go through with, we contact the town to make sure that the town is okay with us purchasing land within their town. So we try to do that as transparent as we can, and then show the town how much money they'll be getting back to from that entry into the county forest land.
All right, thanks, Tom. This is working? This is Al Drabek. Jacob had to leave for a few minutes, so.
Not working out.
Yeah, Jacob had to leave for a few minutes, so I'm just taking over here for a little bit. I guess I had a little quick question here on the groundwater stuff. On the stuff that's not working, is that something, I'm thinking that we should maybe, on the POUTS program that don't seem to be being utilized, I think that we can investigate that just a little bit as well. So that's just another opinion or another thought on that, so.
Are you speaking to McDevco?
The McDevco, yeah, the revolving loan fund there. And I was also gonna ask about the thing about closing up inert pits, but that may be for another discussion sometime.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
I guess, Mr. Chair, if I can just wrap up real quick.
Well, if you're going to wrap up, I'm just going to add a couple things. In regards to the manure pits, I think staff had already alluded to looking into that work already in regard to the.
I think our initial, you mean in terms of what's in
the
there right
idle
now? Yeah,
manure
so I
pits.
think our initial assessment was there might be a better outcome we could consider.
Yeah.
And then I think if the idea is to develop some more information for the next meeting, yeah, we can speak to the McDevco again if you'd like, so.
In regards to the strat plan, though, I think that fits under a strategy. I don't know if that would become an actual strategy. Okay. All right, I think, okay, Vice Chair, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just quickly wrapping up, so if it's time permitting for your next meeting, I would just like to come back and discuss if 5.2 and 6.3, if there's any strategies, any outcome measures that you think need to be added, changed, modified, so we can kind of get an idea on those two objectives, you know, if there's going to be any changes. Like I said, some committees probably aren't going to have any changes, are very minor. So like I said, I don't want to, you know, prolong it too long. I'm not putting pressure on the committee, but if you could review 5.2 and 6.3 in the full comp plan, all the strategies that are in there, in those two objectives, and if there's anything, like administrator said, anything you want changed, added, the outcome measures changed, because I know Lori had some questions about changing different outcome measure. And that's fine. That's what we need to know to add to that change for the strategic plan. So thank you. If are there any questions? And the vice chair is it Al? Yeah. I'll touch base with you before your next meeting and just kind of go over some ideas as far as those two objectives. And Mr. Chair, you're welcome to be part of it too, but we designated the vice chairs as being kind of the leader of the committees for the strategic plan. So I like I said, this was a good discussion. Thank you very much.
One other thing that I want to highlight before we wrap it up, and I don't mean to keep tacking things on, and I appreciate the work that the committee did today. One thing I do want to note, this was under, I referenced an older agenda when I was going through this. This is under item 7, policy issues discussion and potential committee determination. One thing, upon reflection during the discussion today, I did want to get the committee's input on. In regards to the administrator and planning his budget, I think we, unless I am not, unless I'm misinferring from what the committee discussion has been today, in regards to the budget, the upcoming budget, I think that the administrator can take the information in the current strategic plan and view that as fairly solid in regards to his budget preparation for this fall, unless there's any difference in this in this message from what I just said. Is there any objection to that? No. So at least the administrator has a little bit of direction in regards to the upcoming budget. So okay, Supervisor Overbeck. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last meeting, we discussed the sampling of water, or taking water samples throughout the county to identify potential contaminants or whatever, and doing it. And it's in the budget, it looks like, for 2023. But there's also ask for ARPA funds as far as continuing. I think that's very important, because I think that we should set a priority for groundwater in identifying some of those contaminants throughout the county, not just in municipal areas or whatever. And I think we need that sampling as soon as possible so decisions can be made by this committee as far as what to be done or how to address groundwater contamination, or if the groundwater is good. I think that's economically, water is the future, I mean, for development. And I think that's very important to establish that in Marathon County for economic reasons. So I think it's very important that we move forward with that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Supervisor Drayback.
Just to speak on that, I believe that some of the way this could be done is the farms, I think they have to, the grade A farms, they need to be every year, they need to have a water test. And why can't some of their tests, if maybe they could get that information from them farms and not have to spend $400,000 on testing water? Just a thought.
All right, I'm going to remind the committee that we got to focus on the strat plan today. The in-depth discussions, that's fine, but we should have those at a separate meeting. Let's just focus on the strat plan. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vice Chair, for attending today. I'll expect to see you again next month. All right. So going back to the correct agenda, I apologize again. We have 6 educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussion. 8 department updates, CPZ, Park, Rec, and Forestry, Solid Waste. 6A2, Wisconsin Land and Water educational video. I believe that's Kirsty? Okay, Kirsty, sorry.
Yes. We do have a short educational video planned. It is 9 minutes long. If you feel like you still have time to fit that into the schedule today, we are happy to play it.
I would just say it's either 9 minutes today or not, it's 9 minutes next month, so we might as well do it today.
I promise it's not torture. This is for your own good, right? We just wanted to very occasionally plug in some educational pieces like this, whether it's a video like this or an in-person presentation, just to give you all a little bit more of the context behind the work that you do and why we do our work and communicate it to you. So this is a video on Chapter 92 of the Wisconsin statutes, and it's Wisconsin's soil and water conservation law. So you are a land conservation committee that approves local conservation priorities that we identify in our county land and water resource management plan. So we already talked about that plan today. So this is why that plan exists and why Chapter 92 is important to you. So it may produce a question or two. I'm happy to answer a follow-up question if you have it.
It's saved. He tested it right before we started, and it was working fine, so it's saved over here.
Yeah, if we can't get it to work, we could even give a synopsis of it at a future meeting or try downloading it or something as well. More than anything, I think it's neat for you all just to know, the power that's invested in you by Chapter 92. Wisconsin definitely has some of the strongest laws related to the land in the country. And so a lot of this is not common knowledge, even to those of us that work full-time in conservation. So I think it is probably the most important educational piece that we could give you from our department. So if not today, I promise we'll do just a handful of minutes of it in the future, nothing lengthy.
I think I'm the host now.
Is it optimized for video? On the WebEx?
Yeah. These are IT. You know it better than anyone.
So while they're working on this too, just a reminder, I got this off of the Wisconsin Land and Water Organization website. So as LCC, Land Conservation Committee members, you all are all automatically a member of Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association. There's about 450 of you in Wisconsin, and then there's like 360 land conservation.
My name is Matt Kruger. I'm the executive director.
There, good. Wait, but how'd you do that?
Director of Wisconsin Land and Water. This webinar is part of an informative series for new land conservation committee members, but also a refresher for committee members that continue to serve and hopefully beneficial for conservation staff as well. In today's webinar, I will address why Chapter 92 is important to you, focusing on the Wisconsin state law that is the backbone of our soil and water resource management program. Included in this presentation will be the roles and responsibilities of land conservation committees, or LCCs, and briefly, the roles and responsibilities of land conservation department staff, or LCDs. Why Chapter 92 is important to you? Chapter 92 is our soil and water conservation and animal waste management law. It was enacted by the Wisconsin State Legislature in 1981. It contains important information about the authorities, roles, and responsibilities statutorily provided to land conservation committees, or LCCs, in Wisconsin. It's the foundation of LCCs, and every LCC member, newly elected or long-serving, should know it thoroughly. The statute also contains important soil and water resource management information outside of the scope of LCCs. In straightforward language, it declares soil erosion and resulting non-point source water pollution in the state to be, quote, endangering the health and welfare of the state's citizens, its recreational resources, agricultural productivity, and industrial base, end quote. It continues on to declare it the policy of the state to, quote, halt and reverse the depletion of the state's soil resources and pollution of its waters, end quote. These are powerful declarations and provide strong backing for the shared work of LCCs and LCDs. The statute also establishes and defines authorities for the Land and Water Conservation Board, which is covered in another webinar on the Wisconsin Land and Water website. It defines the duties of the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, or DACCAP, and the Soil and Water Resource Management Program that DACCAP administers, also available in a webinar on the Wisconsin Land and Water website. Lastly, it is important to note that while Chapter 92 is the state statute for soil and water conservation and animal waste management, its implementation is guided by an administrative rule, specifically Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection 50, or ATCAP 50, which is DACCAP's Soil and Water Resource Management Program administrative rule. Getting into some specific sections of Chapter 92, Section 92.06 defines the makeup of the LCC. LCCs are made up of at least 2 representatives from the Agriculture and Extension Committee of the county, 1 representative from the County Farm Service, or FSA Committee, any number of county board members, and up to 2 members not on the county board, or citizen members. So it's important to note here that not all county board members are elected officials, or not all LCC members are elected officials, I'm sorry. Some people may be appointed due to their affiliation with other entities, such as town government, or for expertise they possess in a particular area of conservation. And all LCC members will serve 2-year terms. Section 92.07 provides 15 unique and specific powers to LCCs. For LCC members, this is a list worth knowing. Some specific powers include developing and adopting standards for management practices to control erosion, sedimentation, and non-point source pollution. And non-point source pollution here refers to pollution coming from the landscape, such as what washes off farm fields, construction sites, or city streets, as opposed to pollution that comes from a specific point, such as a discharge pipe. Another power is distributing and allocating federal, state, and county funds for cost sharing or other incentive programs for improvements and practices relating to soil and water conservation on private or public lands. So cost sharing here means those public funds that are partially subsidizing a practice for which the landowner also pays a percentage. Another power is LCCs are empowered to encourage research, educational, informational, and public service programs. So these are only a handful of highlighted LCC powers contained in this section. Moving on to Section 92.10, this creates the Land and Water Resource Planning Program, jointly administered by LCCs, the Land and Water Conservation Board, and DACCAP. It specifies duties for all 3 entities relating to the implementation of this program. LCC duties include preparing the Land and Water Resource Management Plan, and some of those required plan components include assessing soil and water quality condition, specifying watershed-based management objectives and practices, as well as multi-year activities to meet them, tracking progress of the plan, and providing information and education. And this section also specifies that public participation is required as part of the plan. Section 92.11 provides that LCCs, to promote soil and water conservation or non-point source water pollution abatement, may enact ordinances for the regulation of land use, land management, and pollutant management practices. These may be applicable to part of or all of a county, and ordinances created under this section may not take effect until approved by local referendum. And this includes revisions to ordinances created under this section as well. And lastly, this section prescribes procedures for enforcement of ordinances. Section 92.09 provides the LCC the authority to employ county soil and water conservation staff, or LCD staff, subject to the approval of the county board. The LCD staff is responsible for the administration of the county soil and water conservation program and may exercise the powers granted to LCCs. So staff are employees of the county. It's worth stating, though it might be obvious. And the LCC may delegate its authority in certain areas to LCC staff. So in effect, the LCDs exercise the powers granted to the LCC. But to be clear, the LCD staff operate under the purview of and with the approval of the LCC. And it's important to note here that depending on the governance structure of a county, LCD staff may also report to a county executive, an administrator, or a coordinator alongside the LCC. So it's therefore important for LCC members to understand the governance structure of their own county to fully understand these roles. Some typical roles of the LCD staff include preparing draft budgets and land and water resource management plans, supervising LCD staff, providing technical assistance to landowners, managing grants, engaging in public outreach and education, administering ordinances, and much more. The list of typical duties is much longer than this, and it grows even longer if the Land Conservation Department is merged with another department, such as zoning, forestry, planning, parks, etc. LCD staff are professionals, and they are essentially the public face of the department. The relationship between LCCs and LCDs is an important one, and it's a topic Wisconsin Land and Water spends considerable time discussing with our members, as it's critical to the success of a department's delivery of public services. The intention of this slide is to illustrate the basic idea of the division of responsibilities between LCCs and LCDs, which is a first step in creating a strong LCC-LCD relationship. Please note that the responsibilities listed here are described in a general sense and may not be applicable to every county. As noted previously, the LCC sets policy and program goals, which LCD staff administer and implement. The LCC approves both the budget and the Land and Water Resource Management Plan, which typically begins with LCD staff developing drafts of both. The LCC provides leadership, support, and policy guidance to the LCD, while the LCD advises and informs the LCC in service of its duties. It's very important to note that with the sample divisions of responsibilities provided here, such as the budget and the Land and Water Resource Management Plan, it's not a one-way or one-time flow of information. The most successful counties have strong relationships between their LCC or specific LCC leaders and the LCD or the county conservationist specifically. And policies and plans of importance to the county are crafted through open communication and collaboration between both. Especially with new membership in the LCC, it is worth spending time at an LCC meeting discussing with LCD staff how best this collaboration can occur in your own county. This will provide for a shared understanding of how you will achieve your soil and water management goals. This concludes this webinar. Please visit www.wisconsinlandwater.org for more LCC training resources. Thank you.
Kirsty, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't, except for thank you for listening. Thanks
Sure.
for your patience.
Oh, thank you for the video. Okay, moving on to item number 8, next meeting, August 2nd, 2022, 3 p.m., Assembly Room, future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. I am doing my best to bake in some of those educational items that we've identified in the past. It's just unfortunate because summer tends to be a busy time of year. Hopefully as we transition into the fall and into the winter, we can start to have some more of those. 8B, announcements, requests, correspondence. I did have a couple of things. First of all, I hope everybody had a nice holiday. Second of all, as I had mentioned at the end of last month's Environmental Resources Committee meeting, I did meet with some representatives from Greenlight towards the end of June. They have expressed interest in attending an Environmental Resources Committee meeting as well as a Metallic Mining Committee meeting. What I would like to do, and of course this is subject to their schedules, as I've noted in the past, is have possibly a special meeting sometime in August and September where we could have a joint meeting between the ERC and the Metallic Mining Committee and have green light present. So that is an item I continue to try and make progress on, and you should expect something at some point in the very near future. Please note, of course, that that is not discussion. These are simply announcements under this particular agenda item. So, any announcements? Rodney? Did we have one that worked on that side of the table?
Yeah, let's pass this one down.
That one works?
No, you got green light now.
Nope. Send it down.
Yeah, well, I would imagine most of you guys don't know, but in the western part of the county, something called Invenergy is, it's got a game plan. They want to put up a wind farm. It's going to encompass 15,000 acres. And, I mean, I was there as a landowner last Thursday night at the Country Air in Stratford. You know, they had a dinner, and they had a Q&A session, but we weren't allowed to raise our hands and speak. They had to be written on a card, and they read it out, and they gave you an answer. I called Lori. She was kind of gray on this area. She did some checking, and I think she can do some more comments here. But I think this is something that's going to be on our radar screen. They did say they don't need county or state or local approval. It's all through the PSC because it's so large.
You want to add?
Oh, not discussion, Marilyn. These are simply announcements. Okay, any other announcements, requests, correspondence?
Mr. Chair, I could add to that.
No.
No?
I didn't mean to sound callous there. Any other announcements, requests, correspondence? Okay, seeing none, motion adjourned will be in order. Don't leave me hanging, guys. Supervisor Vensky with a motion, second by Supervisor Seefeld. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
The recording might have cut off at the end there.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.